Chapter 5, verse 1, "For freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery." Here's what I have to say in my comments. There's a very nice segue from the last verse of chapter 4 and the first verse of chapter 5 in the Greek, which can be easily seen in the English. We don't really need to jump into the Greek to see this, but if I pull up, say, the NIV of the Greek from 4:31 to 5:1, here's what we end up with. "Therefore, brothers, we are not children of the slave woman, but of the free woman." Notice the word free there in verse 31. And then look at 5 verse 1. "It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by a yoke of slavery." End quote. So, what I say in my commentary is that it can be easily seen and understood by the words underlined in my written notes. The word free and the word freedom share the same Greek word, the same root word, eleutheria. And this, of course, is no mystery. This is not some great secret that I've discovered that no one else knows about. But I thought it was kind of interesting that we should see this because Paul is really wanting us to know that this letter is all is to be read together as one continuous whole. Don't stop and break up the chapters and forget about where he's come from. No, remember the logic that he's been carefully building up to. And in fact, there's a kind of a crescendo in chapter 5 where Paul just comes right out and with both guns blazing again. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Slavery is not the ideal of God. So, I believe that the lines were being drawn between the necessity of Jewish identity for covenant inclusion versus the necessity of falling on the mercy and grace of Messiah for genuine covenant membership and forgiveness of sins. That's where I think the contest is in Paul's mind, not between keeping Torah and not keeping Torah. I go on to say in my commentary, the yoke of slavery that one would return to is not a yoke of slavery to commandment keeping. Why would Paul define commandment keeping as slavery, especially since the commandments were the only God-inspired corpus of literature that was available for both Jew and Gentile alike in that day, right? You have to remind yourself when you're reading through the New Testament that there was no New Testament. Just like I said earlier, there was not a body of literature yet that they could turn to for daily living, for daily instruction. Their blueprint for living, both Jew and Gentile, was already outlined in the pages of the Torah and the subsequent prophets and the writings, right? The Tanakh, the Torah, the Nevi'im, the Ketuvim. In other words, the Bible of Jesus and the Bible of Paul was the Bible of the Jews today. So today's Christian must avail himself both of the Tanakh and of the Apostolic Scriptures. In other words, the Bible as a whole, from Genesis to Revelation. So I say the yoke of slavery that one would return to is not a yoke of slavery to commandment keeping. Rather, the yoke of slavery one would return to is a life outside of the freedom of Messiah's atoning righteousness. When the passage is put back into the socio-religious context of the first century, then we find that Paul doesn't need to denigrate the Torah in order to elevate the work of Christ. And I hear this so often in Christian commentaries and in Christian sermons today, and it's really a shame when I hear pastors preach that Paul had to tear down Judaism and Torah in order to lift up the cross and Messiah and Christianity. And that's, wow, I'm so shocked when I hear those words, and I'm grieved when I hear modern Christian commentaries and pastors and believers speak that way about dismantling Judaism and tearing down Torah and things like that. It makes me cringe. So let's keep reading my commentary. The important issues in Galatians that we need to focus on in our study were the social questions surrounding membership in the people of God, and as we shall see in the next verse, circumcision, not Torah. Circumcision was the fulcrum by which membership into first century Israel was being weighed.